There's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bod Father.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hey, everybody. This is Kris from Trauma. You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father. As always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews, and today it's an honor and a privilege to have Mr. Kris Gustofson, drummer of Trauma. Trauma is currently working on their upcoming fourth full-length release, as well as touring throughout Europe with Ross the Boss and Burning Witches. And let me say this, Burning Witches, those ladies can hold their own. Trust me. The new album is the follow-up to 2018's As the World Dies. Trauma originally formed in 1981 in San Francisco and was part of the same scene that gave the world thrash notables as Exodus, Testament, and the mighty Metallica. Trauma's original bassist was none other than the late legendary Cliff Burton, who would later join, of course, Metallica. 1984 saw the release of the group's debut album, Scratch and Scream, before the band parted in 1985. Trauma reunited and have been back in business ever since. So, Kris, glad to have you on the show, and hell yeah, we got another album coming from you guys, man.
I just want to make, because some people might go, well, what have they been doing for almost 20 years? It's hard enough to explain how long, what we've been doing all that other time.
Yeah, people are, if it ain't now, they don't want it. It's like, well, you just have to fucking wait.
Right.
So let's jump right into this, good sir. So how does it feel to be associated with bands like Exodus, Testament, and Metallica for thrash metal in the San Francisco scene, man, when that all was going down in 84 or 81 to that era?
Yeah, that was a number of years ago, very long time ago. And as you know, those bands became, especially Metallica, became very, very huge. I'd seen them quite a few times in the Bay Area. We played with Slayer on some gigs, and we did play with Exodus. I don't remember if we ever did open up for Metallica or not, but it seemed to me that those guys, as soon as Cliff joined the band, shortly after that, they were doing really big gigs, and they went to Europe for quite a long period of time to get established over there, and that's pretty much what helped break the band, along with their 18-month tour going out with Ozzy. So, awesome band. All those bands you just mentioned are some of my favorites, for sure.
They're definitely marked in the metal. And even you guys, you guys have, and plus Metallica, Exodus, all these bands like this, man, have just blown the door open and took it to another level.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of great musicianship in those days, and there was a hell of a scene going on as well that contributed to the success of it all. And I appreciate you saying that. We really didn't know what we had at the time, but as you had mentioned, recording the Scratch and Scream album, there had been a lot of people who have shown a lot of interest in that album, and it did get re-released in 2013 through Mike Varney and Shrapnel Records, which was really nice, and that's what kind of brought the band back on the map.
Was it crucial for Trauma to have their own identity and not sound the same as the band next door when you guys were coming out during that time frame? Because I know a lot of bands will be like, oh, well, this band's doing this, let's do just like that, but change a little bit. How crucial did you think it was for Trauma to be just their own identity?
Oh, it was very crucial. You had to have your own identity for sure, but I do believe that all the bands that you had mentioned, I don't think any of them were copying anything anybody did. I think everybody was trying to do their own thing to gain their own identity. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think it is very important for a band to have its own identity, for sure.
Now, we talked about this a little bit. The band parted in 1985 before the release of the group's debut album, Scratch and Scream. Do you think back and say what could have been if the band didn't part ways? I mean, did you just need a break from it all just to recharge and finally say, okay, now let's do all this?
There was several reasons why that happened. We were playing a lot of local gigs and headlining the Stone and the Keystone Berkeley and Old Waldorf and all that on the weekends and everything. Then we signed a deal with Mike Varney at Shrapnel Records, but at the time, his label really didn't have the capacity of tour support. And that was very, very crucial in those days, is to hook up with another band to try to get out and, get established, like Metallica did with Ozzy, even though those gigs were not easy to get. We didn't have that. So everybody just kind of started getting a little bit burned out with just playing the local clubs and whatnot, even though we were traveling up to Seattle and in other places in LA to try to make a mark for ourselves, but it just wasn't enough. And some other opportunities for some of the other members came about that we took. I actually ended up moving to LA to try to break into the studio scene down there to become a session drummer, and I had pretty good success with that. I did, many, many years later, regret that the band did break up, especially since we had put it back together in 2013, realizing how hard it is in this day and age to try to get something happening again all over. It's been definitely a struggle. So if I sit back and think like, oh my God, what could have happened with this if we didn't do that? It's kind of a little bit of a waste of time to do that, because it's kind of like dealing in the what if, and who really knows? Who really knows what would have happened? So
when this band got back together in 2013 and started, just jamming around, things like that, how good did it feel to be as part as Trauma again? How was it, man, during rehearsals and things?
Well, the funny thing was Varney recommended we should put a live band back together. So we got the original members that played on the Scratch and Scream record together in a rehearsal studio. And to be honest with you, there were several of the members that had been out of it for a fairly long period of time. And you could tell because it was ultra, just super rusty. So unfortunately, after that session, me and Don Hillier pretty much decided that if we were going to do this, we needed to get involved with some people who had more of a track record of touring and being a lot more active. And that's kind of what we had to do. We had to let several guys go and pretty much regroup all over again. But once we did get the right people involved in playing the old material and whatnot, it felt really, really good. It was just like coming home, to be honest.
What was your thoughts on seeing Cliff Burton for the first time, Kris, and the legacy that he left behind? Because, I mean, I'm a huge Cliff Burton fan, and I think he was way ahead of his time. What was your thoughts on seeing him for the first time and getting to jam with him and stuff?
Well, Cliff was a really, really awesome guy. To be frankly honest with you, when I joined the band, I would say 6 months prior to me joining the band, Cliff had already left to join Metallica. There was a different drummer in the band at the time. So I personally did not get a chance to jam with Cliff, but I had heard enough stories within the band on how awesome it was to work with him, because he was just such a down-to-earth, really, really cool guy. And Don Hillier, the vocalist, was extremely close to Cliff, and he would hear a lot of stories from Cliff even when they were going on the road over to Europe and whatnot. And, he was always commenting on, Cliff was always wishing the best for the band. And we were extremely happy for him to be in a band that was really just starting to take off. So it was actually a really awesome experience, and if someone has a better opportunity, especially nobody even in those days knew how big Metallica was going to be. Looking back, the guy did the right choice for sure, because they got signed, I believe, to Megaforce, and that's what put them on the map.
Yes, Mr. John Zazulu, I think.
Yep, exactly.
You guys are working on the band's fourth album. Would you say this new album will be more heavier than 2018's release, As the World Dies, than the other previous releases, possibly?
Yeah, yes, it will be, no doubt. We're putting in a lot faster songs, some heavier rhythms. So, yeah, overall, it's going to be a lot heavier than the last As the World Dies record, for sure.
What's impressed you, Kris, or excited you the most about making this album, if anything, you're working on it right now? Out of everything, what stands out for you possibly?
I guess in a nutshell, the As the World Dies record did fairly well. A lot of people knew about it, even though it did come out on a relatively small label. We got a lot of really, really good reviews on it and everything. So there was interest in definitely putting another record out, but we wanted to take it into a direction of being more in the realm of Bay Area thrash metal. Like I said, playing faster rhythms and just overall faster songs and a lot more aggressive type arrangements and things. So it's been a lot of fun coming up with drum parts for all this stuff. Implementing a lot of things that I haven't been able to put in previous recordings.
Are you glad, though, that these songs are pushing you out of that box, man, that you was kind of maybe not used to going out of, though?
I wouldn't say we're getting really pushed out of the box too much. It's going to definitely be mixing old with new. We're never going to be a band that is going to sound like the current hot metal thing with a singer that is not really singing, but more or less growling, per se, because Donnie has he's got kind of a classical kind of voice. So it's more in line of, Iron Maiden or Judas Priest kind of stuff. But like I said, it's going to be a mixture of the old meets new. But I do think people are going to like it when they hear it.
Any tracks standing out more to you than any right now on the new album, if you could talk about it? I know it must change every time you listen to it or you guys talk about it, because I know these are like your babies, but do you have any that stick out for you possibly?
Yeah, there's a few that are really starting to ring in my head quite a bit. Yeah. See, to answer your question, yeah, there's going to be some a very good array of different types of metal music going on this album that I think is going to be a little, there's going to be something for everybody within it, for sure.
How much is written right now on the album? Are you guys getting close to getting it out, or are you guys still just finishing up on it? What's the lowdown on that right now?
Right now, we have pretty close to about 10, 12 tracks that we're fine-tuning. We're swapping files, listening to things, and trying to get the best arrangements possible and different ideas solidified. So when we do go into record, we're going to have a really good idea of what we want to do, but everything's subject to change. But to be honest with you, I would say we're 85, 95% there right now with having the material.
Are we close to getting out a single right now, or are you guys still working on which one you want to put out there first as a single? And has it kind of been hard to choose which one you wanted?
There's a couple that come to mind, but we're waiting for a record label and also the band members to really make their minds up of what one that may be. But it should be sometime in the not too distant future. We'll be definitely putting something out soon.
Now, are you guys self-producing this record, or are you guys going to work with a producer?
No, we're actually going in with Juan Ortega, a Trident studio in the Bay Area that just did the Last Testament record, and he's the guy that we hired to produce the new Trauma album. Working
with Juan, does he get? Are you guys starting to work with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he recorded. We went in and recorded the last album at Juan's studio, but
okay,
it wasn't produced by Juan. It was kind of co-produced by Juan. But we had one of the guitar players that was more in charge of producing it this last time around. This time around, though, Juan's going to be fully in charge of the whole enchilada. Yeah, I would say it was definitely headed into a very cool direction working with him. But once again, there was one of the guitar players in Trauma at the time wanted to produce the album, and we went ahead and did it that way. And I do think that album did come out really good. But I think this one, with having Juan in full control of it and doing everything in his power to produce a really good record, I think it's just gonna be a really very awesome product.
What do you hope everyone takes away, or message you hope they hear while listening to any of Trauma's music in general? What do you hope they get from it, Kris?
I really, truly hope that the people that like this kind of music will give the record or recordings a spin. And, you know, I hope there's something there that people can sink their teeth in. Obviously, we're not in the days of anymore of, selling millions and millions of records. I wish we were. But overall, we're having fun doing this. And we do truly hope that people react to the record in a really good way so we can entertain people by playing live gigs. So that's kind of it with that.
What can fans expect at a show from the Mighty Trauma who have not got to see you guys live as of yet? What are they going to get when they come to see you all live?
Well, the last gig we just played, we played at the House of Blues. We opened up for Metal Allegiance during the NAMM show, and we got really, really, really good compliments from like Chuck Billy from Testament and Bobby from Overkill and some of the other people down there that really have never heard the band play live before. And the crowd definitely liked it a lot. We do put on a really good show. It's full of energy. We try to make sure that we don't compromise in any way of putting on a really good show for people, because it's just it's difficult for people to get out to shows. It's expensive, so we just want people to get their money's worth when they come see Trauma.
What made you want to become a musician? What was that spark for you, man, that said, yeah, that's what I want to do right there?
Probably started when I was a really young kid. My dad was a big band drummer, and I used to go to a lot of his gigs with him when I was a kid. And when I got good enough after practicing, I'd sometimes sit in and play with some of his friends, playing different kind of music. So I grew up kind of with a jazz background, and it was something that I always wanted to do. And yeah, I've been pretty much at it ever since, playing with a lot of different other bands as well besides Trauma.
Now, everything is starting to open back up just a little bit from the quarantine from the coronavirus. Do you think this has hurt concerts and festivals in the long run, or do you think that it'll eventually pick back up? Because I know things are going to change now from here on out, I believe, with this COVID-19 stuff.
Yeah. It's something we're all just going to have to deal with. I don't think live music is going to ever go away. I think it's always going to be somewhat, I think it's going to, moving forward, I think it is going to be something different. I think people are going to have to wear masks, maybe until there's a cure, some sort of vaccination. If there's a vaccination that cures people from this, I think everything has a chance to go totally back to normal. And I know that's what's being worked on through a lot of different governments and around the world. But as a whole, yeah, I mean, there's a couple clubs that have just closed in San Francisco. Slim's closed, and I'm sure there's a lot more around the world that have closed. But I think as far as tours and festivals this year, they're all canceled. And I'm sure 2021 is going to be completely crazy. But let's just pray to God that there's not some sort of huge spike with this stuff. And let's just also hope that someone comes up with a cure for it. So our odds will be a lot better if things are going back to normal, in my opinion, if that happens.
Is there a country that stands out or shocks you that Trauma's music gets support in, or possibly you guys get support from, maybe?
There's some pretty far away places that we have gotten airplay from. I'm trying to remember, geez, that's a hard question to answer. I truly like when people from a very far away place has heard of the band or listened to a track of the band or whatever, because you just never know, as opposed to it just being, the U.S. and then Europe and then South America, when it's broken down into certain cities or should I say countries and then cities, it's very interesting to see what cities might be picking up on a track or whatever. But there's been some that have been pretty far off out there, like way out in Asia and in really obscure parts of Europe as well. So it all really just depends. But yeah, I think it's cool when that happens.
Now, Trauma will be on a European tour with Ross the Boss and Burning Witches in the fall. The only other time that Trauma played in Europe, guys, was at the Headbangers Open Air Festival, and they only got to play for 90 minutes. So until the manager told them, nope, got to quit. How excited are you guys to get back over there to Europe? And that blows my mind. This is only like your, I guess, second time going back over there for a big tour.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, I've played over there quite a few times. I was in a band over there that was based out of Switzerland a number of years ago, and we played some pretty big gigs over there at that time. And the funny thing was, is when I was doing that with this band, a lot of people backstage would go, "Oh my God, are you the drummer that played on Trauma's Scratch and Scream album?" And I go, yeah. And they'd be like, "Well, first I want your autograph, and then second, why don't you put that band back together?" So, but to answer your question, we are ultra excited to be able to go over there and spend some time, especially 8 or 9 dates in Germany, and then play in Switzerland as well. I believe there's a show in Switzerland as well. I think there's a total of 18 to 20 dates that we're going to be going over there. But we're super excited to be able to go over there and play again, because we had a blast when we did the Headbangers Open Air. It was a different lineup then, though, than we have now. I wish we would have had the lineup we have now that when we did that gig over there at the Headbangers Open Air. But nonetheless, it did go off pretty well.
When can we see this album out? When are you guys shooting for? Possibly early, like later this year, early next year? What's going on?
Well, we're shooting for possibly the fall, if that is even remotely possible. We'd like to try to get the album out before the tour takes off. The first gig is in November 17th in Sweden, so we would really have to get that album out sometime, I would say no later than the 1st of October. So it's really pushing the envelope here, but there are some labels that are interested in it, so you never know. Hopefully we will be able to get it out relatively soon in the next several months.
Kris, how can folks stay in touch with you guys, buy some merchandise, this new album when it comes out, and plus tour dates when everything gets back to normal and people can get out and check out some shows? How can they do that, good sir?
Best thing to do is look us up on Facebook or our website, which is www.traumathrash.com, and then all the information is on either of those. I do know that you could also just go to a regular search engine and type in Trauma Metal Band, and a lot of stuff comes up that way. So there's stuff being posted relatively all the time on new news of what's going on with the band and everything.
And before I let you go, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. This is Kris from Trauma. You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Hour podcast. Please get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link, YouTube link, and every link that we're associated with. And trust me, we're all over the platforms just about. Also, get out and check out Trauma's new album when this comes out. Give this band a shot. Pick up their old stuff too, and you will not be disappointed. So, Kris, thank you for being on the show, and I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. Thank you for having interest and being a fan of the band. We truly appreciate it.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.